A final flicker marks the moment of murder. Welcome to Wolfe's Casebook. I am your host, Enigma. Comment with your location. I love seeing this community connect. Let's step in. If you've never heard silence complain, you haven't lived in a brownstone with Nero Wolfe. Sunday afternoons are supposed to be easy. That's why God made them and why Fritz makes roast pork that could quiet a riot. In our house, they come with a schedule as tight as a drumhead. Wolfe in the office until 4, orchids at 4 sharp, beer at 5, dinner at 7, and me somewhere in between, mostly making sure the world stays outside the front door and that Wolfe doesn't have to get up for anything short of a subpoena or a souffle. So when the doorbell went at 3:20, it didn't just ring. It committed an offense. I was at my desk in the office, feet on a filing cabinet, giving my eyes a vacation from a stack of correspondence. Wolfe sat in his red leather chair behind his desk, the same way a big black bear sits behind a riverbank waiting for fish to volunteer. He had a book open but wasn't reading it. With Wolfe, books are often props for thinking. His lips were set in that mild disapproval he wears the way other men wear shirts. The bell buzzed again. Longer this time, like whoever was out there had a grievance. Wolfe's eyes rose 1/8 of an inch. Mr. Goodwin. That was all. No need to say please, because I'm paid to understand the nuances of a 2-word sentence. I sighed, dropped my feet, and went to the hall. At the front door, I took a look through the peephole. A man stood on the stoop with the posture of someone trying to make his spine apologize for existing. Late 50s, maybe, neatly dressed but not expensive, graying hair that had been combed in a hurry and then regretted. He held his hat in both hands like it was a fragile animal. I opened the door crack and kept the chain on. Sunday manners die hard, but so does caution. Yes? He blinked, then forced a polite smile. Mr. Goodwin. That's me. He swallowed. My name is Walter Keene. I need to see Mr. Wolfe. It's important. If it's important, it can wait until Monday. Mr. Wolfe doesn't do business on Sundays. His eyes darted past me, hoping maybe to see reason floating in our hall like a friendly ghost. I understand. I do. But it can't wait. Please, it concerns a death. That word gets you a longer look. Not because I'm a soft touch, ask any city editor, but because every time death comes to the brownstone, it tries to pretend it's not intruding, which makes it intrusive twice over. I cracked the door a little wider. Death of who? He licked his lips. My sister, Eleanor Keene. I didn't recognize the name, which doesn't mean much. New York is a phone book with ambition. Still, there are deaths and deaths. A sister isn't the kind you mention lightly. This guy looked like he'd been carrying a weight for days and wasn't sure where to set it down. Was it an accident? Illness? No. The word came out hard enough to chip enamel. Not illness, and not an accident. All right, I said. Wait there. I closed the door, slid the chain loose, and went back to the office. Wolfe looked up, impassive. Male. 58. Decent suit. Worried collar. Says his sister died and it can't wait. Claims it wasn't illness or accident. Wolfe didn't move anything but his eyes. On a Sunday. On a Sunday. He stared at me a moment, then at the book, then somewhere past the book where his brain keeps its private zoo. Finally, he said, Bring him in. I will give him 5 minutes. When Wolfe says 5 minutes, he means it. His internal clock is better than Greenwich. I went back, opened the door all the way this time, and waved the man in. Come on, wipe your feet on the mat. My boss prefers his intrusions dust-free. He gave a distracted nod and stepped inside, glancing around as if expecting the walls to accuse him. I took his hat and coat. The coat was damp, with a light December drizzle, and smelled faintly of cold air and cheap tobacco. He followed me down the hall into the office the way men follow doctors into the bad news room. Wolfe rose, not from his chair, don't faint, but from his silence. He didn't stand, he just acknowledged the man with his eyes and that slow, heavy courtesy he can deploy when he decides it's useful. "Mr. Keene, sit down." Keene sat on the yellow chair across from Wolfe's desk, perching on the edge like he expected to bolt. His hands gripped his knees. The knuckles were pale. Wolfe's voice was even. "Mr. Goodwin reports that this concerns your sister's death. I do not ordinarily receive clients on Sunday. Your presence here is a discourtesy to my habits. It would be wise to justify it quickly." Keene nodded too fast. "I'm sorry. I truly am. But I didn't know where else to go. My sister was killed, Mr. Wolfe, and the police they're treating it like a simple robbery, and they're wrong." Wolfe steepled his fingers. "You are her next of kin?" "No, she never married. I'm all she had. We were close." He tried to swallow again and failed. "She lived on West 73rd Street, 2 blocks from Central Park. She had an apartment, a good one. She'd been there 12 years. Wolfe waited. Silence makes people keep talking. Keene drew a breath. "Thursday night, someone broke into her apartment. They say he forced the lock. She was found Friday morning by the superintendent. There was a lamp knocked over. The drawer in her desk was open. Her purse was empty, so they say robbery. But it isn't." "Why?" "Because nothing of value was taken except one thing." His voice tightened. "And that thing isn't valuable to anyone in a pawn shop." Wolfe's eyes narrowed a shade. "What was taken?" "A photograph." He spread his hands as if he expected it to be obvious. "An old photograph, black and white. It was always on her desk, in a frame." I leaned forward. I'm a sucker for the specific. "Who was in the photo?" Keene hesitated. "Eleanor, with a man." "What man?" "I don't know." Frustration flashed. "I never knew, she never told me. She said it was a reminder. And when I asked of what, she laughed and said, of the sort of life I didn't choose." Wolfe shifted his bulk a fraction. "That's like a glacier having an opinion. Your sister was killed in the course of a burglary. A photograph was taken. You believe the photograph is the motive?" "Yes." Keene's voice gained a little steadiness, as if saying it out loud made it truer. "Because of what happened 3 days before. That got Wolfe's attention in a way you can't miss if you've watched him for 10 years. His eyes held steady, and he said nothing. Keene continued, the words now coming as if they'd been rehearsing in his throat. "On Monday, a man came to my sister's apartment. She told me about it that night." She was shaken. Eleanor didn't shake easily. "She said he wanted the photograph. Offered her money for it. A lot of money." "How much?" "She didn't say." He rubbed a hand over his forehead. "But she said it was enough to make her angry, because it meant he thought she was for sale. She told him no. He got cold. Not violent exactly. But there was something in him. She said he smiled like a stranger in a mirror and left." "Did she describe him?" "Yes. Tall, maybe 40. Dark hair. Polite in the way of people who don't need to be," she said. That's Eleanor's phrase. "Did she call the police?" Keene shook his head. "No, she didn't think she could explain it. Maybe she thought it was old business coming to haunt her. She said she'd handle it. And then she was dead 3 nights later." "Yes." Wolfe's fingers tapped together once. "You informed the police of this visit and the attempt to buy the photograph." "I did. Yesterday. They wrote it down and nodded, and the detective, his name's Daly, said it didn't change anything. He said burglars sometimes take photographs because they look valuable." Keene's mouth twisted, as if a framed picture on a desk looks like a diamond bracelet. "That is indeed a thin notion," Wolfe murmured. He looked at me. "Mr. Goodwin, note the name." I nodded and did. Not because I forget names, but because Wolfe likes ceremony. Keene leaned forward. Mr. Wolfe, I don't know what that photograph meant, but someone did. Enough to kill my sister for it. I want to know who and why. I want justice. Wolfe's gaze measured him like a butcher checks a side of beef. Not unkindly, just accurately. Mr. Keene, justice is a variable commodity. Sometimes it is obtained in a courtroom. Sometimes only in the mind. I cannot promise you the former. I'm not asking for promises. Just that you try. Wolfe opened his mouth to say something, then closed it and stared at him another moment. When he spoke again, his voice was deliberate. Your sister's death occurred Thursday night. The police are engaged. I assume you have not retained counsel or initiated any private inquiries. No. And you have no knowledge of the photograph's content beyond your sister being pictured with an unidentified man. That's right. So your case, as presented, is an assumption resting on a missing object. I do not habitually accept cases requiring assumptions. Keene's shoulders sagged. Then you won't help me. Wolfe's eyes flicked to mine. Not necessarily. Mr. Goodwin, ask Mr. Keene the question I am formulating. That's Wolfe. When he tosses me a line like that, I know he's already written the play and I'm reading stage directions. I turned to Keene. Your sister, Eleanor, what did she do for a living? Keene blinked, surprised. She was the executive director of the Lumen Foundation. Never heard of it. It's not big. A private philanthropic foundation. Focused on arts education, scholarships, community stuff. She'd been there 8 years. Before that, she worked at a museum, finance office. She was sharp, organized. People trusted her. And the foundation's offices are where? Midtown, 47th Street. She handled the budgets, grants, approvals, everything. Wolfe nodded very slightly. I kept going. Any enemies? Any fights? Any relatives besides you? Maybe a lover or an ex who'd want a souvenir? Keene shook his head. No relatives. She didn't talk about lovers. She was private that way, but no, not enemies. She wasn't an easy person, but she was fair. Who benefits from her death? I asked. Money, position, that kind of sour fruit. He frowned. At the foundation, there's a board, if that's what you mean. But her death doesn't change anything right away, except that they need someone to replace her. Who's on the board? Wolfe asked. Keene named them, counting on his fingers as he went. Mr. Harold Vane. He's the founder, chairman. Mrs. Celia Marsh. She's a patron, rich widow. Dr. Ansel Roth. He's a professor of urban policy, consults on outreach. And Mr. Gavin Holt. He's a lawyer, handles the foundation's legal side. I wrote the names down. Vane, Marsh, Roth, Holt. They had a nice ring of potential trouble. 4 people is a good start if you're looking for motive hiding in plain sight. Wolfe said, Mr. Keene, how well did you know these individuals? I've met them at events. They were all cordial. Vane liked Eleanor. He called her the spine of the foundation. Roth was friendly. Marsh barely spoke to me. Holt was, he searched for the right word, efficient. Any of them aware of that photograph's existence? Keene hesitated. Possibly. Eleanor had it on her desk at home, not at the office. But Holt had been to her apartment once, I think. And Vane, he took her to dinner a few times. She mentioned it. Did she ever say why the foundation was called Lumen? I asked, because something about it was tickling my ear. Keene gave a sad little smile. She said it meant light. She liked the idea of making light for other people. She called her job keeping the lamps trimmed. That did it. A foundation named Light, a sister with a missing photograph, and a lamp knocked over at the crime scene. Maybe coincidence. New York runs on coincidence. But Wolfe doesn't. Wolfe gazed down at his hands, thinking. Finally he said, Mr. Keene, You said the police found evidence of forced entry. Yes. The lock was damaged. Did they specify the method? A pry? A key? A pick? I don't know. Detective Daly said it was jimmied. Very good. Wolfe looked up. How soon after the discovery did you attend the apartment? Friday afternoon. The police were still there. Did you enter? Yes. I insisted. I needed to see her. They let me in after they were done. Wolfe's voice softened a hair without losing weight. Did you observe anything else missing or disturbed? Keen's eyes went distant for a second, then he shook his head. No, not really. Nothing I could tell. The place was messy from the search, but her jewelry was still there. She had a small safe with papers. It was closed. Her laptop was on the kitchen table. The photograph was the only thing I knew wasn't there. Wolfe sat still for a long moment. Then he said, Mr. Keen, I will accept your case. Keen jerked, as if not sure he'd heard right. You will? Yes. Not because I am persuaded of my ability to secure legal justice, but because the matter has invaded my Sunday. Wolfe's eyes held Keen's, calm and lethal. Someone who kills for a photograph is either a fool or a man with a reason. I dislike both types. Moreover, there is an element of the symbolic that interests me. Light extinguished. Lumen, a lamp overturned. If those are theatrics, I wish to know by whom and to what end. That last line was Wolfe admitting curiosity without calling it that, which is like a lion admitting he's hungry. Keen's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you. Wolfe lifted a hand. There will be a fee. $10,000. Plus expenses. Keen swallowed but didn't flinch. All right, I can arrange it. Eleanor left me money. Not much, but enough. Excellent. Mr. Goodwin will see to the formalities tomorrow. For now, I require particulars. Provide Mr. Goodwin with your sister's address, your own address, and a list of her acquaintances as you can recall them. Include anyone connected to the Lumen Foundation, however trivial. Also, if you possess any photograph of the photograph, if it was ever duplicated, inform us. I don't have a copy, Keen said quickly. I never thought. Then think now. Wolfe's tone was flat, not scolding. Memory is a tool. Use it. Keen nodded, wiping his hands on his trousers like he'd found sweat there. I will. I'll write it out. Tonight. Good. And Mr. Keen, do not attempt any personal investigations. Do not confront anyone. Grief makes men rash, and rashness makes corpses. Wolfe's eyes drifted to me. Mr. Goodwin, escort our client out. I stood. Sure thing. This way, Mr. Keen. Mind the tiger rug. It bites if you step on its tail. He gave me a faint, startled laugh. The first sign that he was still alive under the sorrow, and I guided him to the front hall. He collected his coat and hat, thanked me twice, and walked out into the damp afternoon with the slow care of someone carrying something fragile. When I came back, Wolfe was sitting exactly as before, but the air in the office had changed. That happens when a case starts to have teeth. He didn't look up from the book. Mr. Goodwin. Yeah? Telephone Inspector Kramer tomorrow at 9. Inform him that we are engaged in the Keen matter. Also contact Saul Panzer. I anticipate the need for discreet inquiry. Already. Wolfe's eyes lifted. A photograph that men will kill to obtain is rarely a mere keepsake. It is usually leverage. I intend to discover who believed your client's sister possessed leverage, and why it became urgent on Thursday night. I nodded. Any other marching orders? Yes. Wolfe closed the book softly. Bring me the list when Mr. Keen submits it. Then take a taxi to West 73rd Street. I want a full account of the apartment, the neighborhood, and the superintendent. If there is theatricality, it will have a stage. Got it. He leaned back, huge and composed, like a Buddha who'd read too many legal briefs. And Archie, he only uses my first name when he's about to say something that matters. The sanctity of this house has been disturbed on a Sunday. I dislike disturbance. See that you are diligent." That was Wolfe's way of saying he'd already set the trap. Now he wanted me to check the hinges. I went to my desk, pulled a clean page into the typewriter, and wrote at the top, "Keene, Eleanor, Lumen Foundation, missing photograph." Under it I added 4 names the client had given us, and then I sat back and stared at them. Outside, the rain started to fall harder, like New York was washing the sidewalks for what we were about to drag on to them. Inside, Nero Wolfe had accepted a case, which meant it was no longer a death that happened in the world. It was a death that had entered the brownstone. And once a thing enters this house, it doesn't leave until Wolfe tells it to. Monday at the brownstone always feels like the city putting its tie back on. Fritz is in the kitchen waging his gentle war against hunger. Wolfe is in the office pretending he isn't interested until he is, and I'm the human hinge between inside and out. At 8:55, I had coffee in me and the phone in my hand. Wolfe was already at his desk, a mountain with a thesaurus. I dialed Inspector Kramer's number. The switchboard voice recognized me, which is a sad comment on my habits, and put me through. Kramer picked up sounding like a man who's already fought with 2 clerks and lost to 1. "Yeah? Morning, Inspector. Archie Goodwin." A grunt. "What is it?" "Wolfe is engaged in the Eleanor Keene case, the Lumen Foundation lady on 73rd. Silence for half a beat. "Who asked him?" "Her brother, Walter Keene. Came in yesterday." "You people don't take Sundays." "Wolfe says a disturbance in the Sabbath is a clue. He's poetic when he's annoyed." Another grunt, this one with skepticism. "You staying out of my way or getting in it? We'll try to stay parallel and not collide. If we step on toes, I'll send ointment." "Huh. Just don't tamper." "We never tamper. We rearrange reality." "Right," he said, meaning wrong. "Daly's on it. Keep me posted if you get anything that's not smoke." "Sure thing." I hung up and made a note. Kramer warned Daly lead. Then I dialed Saul Panzer. Saul answers his own phone because he considers secretarial work an avoidable flaw in civilization. "Saul." "Archie, you're up early. Wolfe wants you on a quiet jog. Case note only so far. Eleanor Keene, dead in her apartment. Missing photo may be motive. Lumen Foundation. I'll send you names as we get them." "Who's paying?" "Grieving brother with a small inheritance and a big suspicion." "That's 2 out of 3. I'll be ready." "Stay on ice. I'll call again." When I turned, Wolfe's eyes were on me. Kramer informed. Saul alerted. I picked up my notepad. Keene promised a list last night. If it doesn't show, I'll go shake it loose. He will show. Wolfe said it like a fact he had personally arranged. Grief is obedient when it needs help. At 9:20, the doorbell rang with correct weekday humility. I got it. Keene came in holding an envelope fat enough to be a paperback. He looked like he hadn't slept so much as dozed at the edge of sleep, wary of what might happen if he went all the way in. "Mr. Goodwin." His voice was tired but steadier. "Come on in. You're right on schedule, which makes you the day's first miracle." He handed me the envelope. I wrote everything I could think of. Names, events, anything that might matter. I may have repeated myself. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for being thorough. Wolfe likes it. I took him to the office. Wolfe nodded at him once, polite as a cathedral door. "Mr. Keene." Gestured to the chair. "Sit. Mr. Goodwin, the envelope." I gave it to Wolfe, who opened it, pulled out 3 typed pages and 1 handwritten addendum. He read without moving his head, just his eyes traveling like a slow, deliberate predator. I watched Keene while Wolfe read. The man's hands kept clasping and unclasping like he was trying to remember what to do with them now that his sister wasn't in the world. After a couple minutes, Wolfe spoke. "You have provided the board members, which you already told us. You have added certain staff at Lumen, a comptroller named Miriam Lott, a grants coordinator, Theodore Teddy Phelps, and an assistant, Lisette Arnaud." Keene nodded. Lisette worked closely with Eleanor. She adored her. Miriam Lott. She's been there forever. Teddy's newer. Wolfe glanced down again. "You have also included non-foundation acquaintances. A neighbor, Mrs. Ada Novak, a friend from her museum days, Dr. Paul Berrien, and a man named Victor Hale, whom you identify as her occasional dinner companion." Keene's jaw tightened. "Yes, Victor Hale was," he struggled, "not a lover, exactly. At least Eleanor never said. But he appeared often enough. Do you know his occupation? Something in advertising. He had money. He was charming in a practiced way. I didn't like him, but Eleanor kept him at arm's length." Wolfe looked up. "You note that on Monday evening your sister mentioned a visitor seeking the photograph. Did she say whether the visitor was known to her?" "No. She said she had seen him once before, years ago. I asked where, she said, at a time I'm not proud of. That's all." Wolfe's mouth compressed. "There is another item." He tapped the handwritten addendum. "You wrote this at 2 a.m., presumably." Keene blinked. "I remembered it late. You state that 2 weeks ago your sister asked you an unusual question. She asked, if I died suddenly, would you trust the Lumen board to honor my work?" Keene swallowed. "Yes." She said it with a smile, but I remember thinking it wasn't a joke. I asked why she was talking like that. She said, "Just checking where the floor is." Wolfe's eyes stayed on him. "Did she give any reason?" "No." Wolfe set the papers down precisely. "Mr. Keene, your assistance has been invaluable. Now you will go home and remain there. If anyone contacts you regarding your sister or the foundation, you will say nothing of our involvement and report the contact to Mr. Goodwin at once." Keene nodded, almost grateful for an instruction he could obey. I walked him out, told him to eat something, and watched him disappear into the morning like a man leaving a church too early. Back in the office, Wolfe was already thinking in that heavy, quiet way that makes the room feel smaller. "So," I said, sitting down, "your poetic lamp and missing photo just picked up a second verse. Eleanor worried about the board before she died." "Yes." Wolfe's fingertips touched, separated. "She anticipated danger, Archie. From a photograph? Perhaps from what it represented." Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "You will go to West 73rd Street now. Study the apartment, speak with the superintendent, and with Mrs. Novak, if possible. I want to know whether the burglary was a burglary, and whether the lamp was overturned by chance or by design. On my way." I grabbed my coat. "And Archie—" Wolfe leaned back, his eyes hooded. "If the Lumen Foundation is involved, we will need their light. Go to their offices after you visit the apartment. Talk, listen. Bring me the darkness you find." That was a nice, neat order. I headed out, thinking maybe the case wasn't going to be about a missing photograph after all. Maybe it was about the kind of thing people hide in a photograph when they don't want to hide it anywhere else. West 73rd was doing its Monday impersonation of calm respectability. Dog walkers, a delivery truck, one guy in a camel hair coat who looked like he'd been born with a newspaper under his arm. Eleanor Keene's building sat between a bodega that smelled like oranges and yesterday and a dry cleaner that promised miracles on trousers. The lobby was small, polished, and guarded by a brass directory that had seen better decades. The superintendent was a thick-shouldered man with a grey mustache and the resigned eyes of someone who spends his life explaining things to tenants who don't listen. His name was Rizzo. It said so on a plastic badge that had his first name, Sal, and a smudge where optimism used to be. I introduced myself as politely as a guy from Nero Wolfe's office can. Rizzo looked me over, decided I wasn't a cop, which pleased him, and said, "You hear about Ms. Keene?" That's right. I work for a private investigator. We're trying to understand what happened. He sighed and leaned his forearms on the desk. Cops already asked me till my throat was dry. Then you're warmed up. Give me the version you tell a friend. That got a grunt that might have been a laugh. Friend version is, it's a damn shame. She was a good tenant. Quiet, always said hello. Paid on time, no drama. Any visitors lately? Anyone who stood out? People come and go. She had a gent with dark hair, fancy scarf. Came by maybe once a week. Night team, usually. Not loud, not rude. Signed the book. He tapped a leather log on the desk. Name was Victor something. Hale, maybe. Yeah, that fits. Anyone else? Rizzo scratched his mustache. There was a new guy last Monday. I remember 'cause he asked for her like he didn't know the drill. Tall fella. Good coat, not cheap. Didn't sign. Said he was expected. I buzzed up anyway. She didn't complain. How long was he up there? Maybe 20 minutes. Came down fast. Eyes like ice. Didn't. Look at me. That was the visitor after the photograph. Keene had described him about the same way, except Rizzo hadn't heard the mirror line. Did he come back? No. Thursday night, when it happened. What did you see? Rizzo's face closed a little, the way it does when people rehearse something they wish wasn't theirs to say. I was off by 10. Building's got a night doorman, Alvarez. He said he didn't see anybody go up to her floor after 11, but around 1:30 he heard the back stair door click. Went to look. It was shut. We checked the lock next day. Scratch marks, like somebody worked it. Back stair door leads where? Basement and the alley. We keep it locked. Usually is. Usually? He spread his hands. It's New York. Locks get tired. Alvarez see anyone leave through the front? Not that night, but he was in the chair. He might have blinked. Any cameras? Lobby, front door, elevator. Cops took the footage. Did they say if her apartment door was forced? He frowned. They keep saying jimmied, but I seen that lock after. It wasn't busted. Little scrape around the plate, sure, but if somebody pried it, I'd have had to replace it. I didn't. That pricked my ears. So how'd they get in? Rizzo lifted a shoulder. Maybe picked it, maybe had a key. She had 2 spares on file with me, one for cleaning lady, one in case she locked herself out. Where are those spares now? Cops took 'em, sealed 'em in a bag like they was gold. Who had access to them besides you? Me and Alvarez. Sometimes my wife if she's covering the desk. That's it. Cleaning lady's name? Mrs. Petrov. Comes Tuesdays. She didn't come last week. Heard about it on the news. I made a note. Then I said, mind if I take a look at her place? Cops still got it taped, but if you got somebody up there to let you in, I'll buzz you. He squinted. You got a warrant? No, I've got a smile and dead sister's brother. He considered me a beat, then sighed. All right, don't touch nothing. I don't need Daly chewing my head off again. He buzzed the elevator, and I went up. 3rd floor, down a carpeted hall that smelled faintly of boiled cabbage and old perfume. Her door still wore police tape like a bad scarf. I had to show my face to a uniform stationed at the far end. He asked my business. I gave him the licensed detective routine. He called someone, got bored, and waved me on. Inside, the apartment was tidy in its bones, even after the police had rummaged through it. There was neat furniture, calm colors, books shelved by size and mood. The air had that faint, sweet metal smell death leaves behind, no matter how much someone cleans. I didn't linger on the human part. I'm not made of ice, but I tried to keep my emotions from leaving fingerprints. The desk was in the corner by the window. One drawer was open, the top right. Papers inside were skewed but not ransacked. The desktop had a lamp on its side, base toward the chair, shade cracked. A cord trailed to the outlet. If it had been knocked over in a struggle, you'd expect the shade to be closer to the floor, not neatly beside the desk. It looked placed, or at least toppled with care. The space where a photo frame would sit was a clean rectangle in the dust. Wolfe was right. That picture had lived there a long time. On the carpet near the desk, I saw something small glinting. I crouched without touching it and leaned close. A button, black plastic, not from a lamp, not from a woman's blouse, more like a men's overcoat or suit. There were 2 holes, one thread still attached, caught in the carpet pile. The cops had missed it or left it for me, which I doubted. I took out an evidence envelope from my pocket, one of those things I keep around because sometimes life is kind enough to be useful, and used a pencil tip to lift the button in, sealed it, labeled it, and whistled softly through my teeth. Robbers don't usually shed buttons for photographs, but men who come in with coats and purpose sometimes do. As I left the apartment, I looked once more at the lamp. Under the base, half hidden, was a faint scuff mark on the wood floor, an arc like the lamp had been slid before it fell. The kind of mark you make when you move something to get at something else. Maybe the photograph had been tucked behind it once. Maybe somebody expected it to be. Either way, the scene was starting to look less like a burglary and more like a search. I went back downstairs, thanked Rizzo, and stepped out onto 73rd with a button in my pocket and a growing conviction that Eleanor Keene had been right to ask where the floor was. Now it was my job to find out who had pulled it out from under her. I flagged a cab and told the driver a Midtown, 47th near 5th, which in this town is like asking to be delivered into a canyon full of mirrors and money. While he argued with traffic, I did my arguing with the button in my pocket and the scuff mark in my head. The Lumen Foundation had offices on the 9th floor of a building that wore its respectability like a pressed shirt. The lobby was marble, the air smelled of citrus polish, and the security guard had the bored authority of a guy who has seen too many people in expensive shoes ask for too much. I gave him my card. He called up, got a yes, and waved me toward the elevator. On 9, the door opened to a reception area that was bright in the way philanthropy likes to be. White walls, cheerful abstract art, a potted plant that had never known hunger. Behind the desk sat a woman with a tight bun and a polite smile that probably came with dental records. She was in her 30s, neat and controlled, with eyes that moved fast enough to be taking notes even while she listened. "Mr. Goodwin, I'm Lisette Arno." She stood halfway, not sure if I rated, full rising. "I was told you're from Mr. Wolfe's office." "That's right. I'm sorry for the circumstances." The smile flickered. "Thank you. We're all still trying to understand it." She glanced toward a hallway. "Mr. Vane is in a board call, but he said you could see Ms. Lott first." "Fine by me. Lead on." She walked me down a corridor lined with framed photos of scholarship recipients, shaking hands with beaming donors. I noticed one thing right away. Every photo had a little brass plaque under it except 2. Those 2 had fresh rectangles of lighter paint around them, like something had been removed recently. It might have been routine redecorating. It might have been a nervous hand. We went into a glass-partitioned office where a woman sat hunched over spreadsheets like she was trying to wrestle the numbers into decency. She was mid-50s, square-faced, hair iron gray, glasses hanging on a chain. The kind of woman who could tell you the price of a paperclip in 2009 without checking. "Miriam Lott," Lisette said. "This is Archie Goodwin." Miriam looked up with eyes that had been tired for years. "Mr. Goodwin." Her voice was flat, not unfriendly, but not prepared to waste emotion on strangers. "If this is about Eleanor." "It is. We're trying to piece together what happened. I'd like to ask a few questions." She nodded once. Lisette hovered by the door. "You can stay," I told Lisette, "unless you'd rather not." Her chin lifted. "I'd rather. Eleanor was my boss." "All right." I sat across from Miriam. "First, I'm sorry. Second, I'm not the police. I'm with Nero Wolfe. We're acting for her brother." We want to know if Eleanor had any troubles here recently. Threats, arguments, pressure. Miriam's mouth tightened. Troubles. Not the usual kind. We're a foundation, Mr. Goodwin. We dispense money. That creates expectations. People call, complain, beg. Eleanor dealt with that. She was good at it. Anything out of pattern the last month? She hesitated just a fraction. There was a grant review that got contentious. Contentious how? Harold Vane wanted to fast-track a large disbursement for a program downtown. Eleanor said no. She said the paperwork wasn't right. She wouldn't bend. Miriam's eyes flicked to Lisette, then back to me. Harold doesn't like to be told no. Lisette said quietly, it wasn't just paperwork. Miriam shot her a look. Lisette, it's true, Lisette insisted, voice shaking a little. Eleanor said the program's sponsor had conflicts. She said the money would end up in a politician's pocket. She was furious. That was useful. I let it hang a second. Did she say which sponsor? Lisette opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't name him, only that it was someone who knew how to smile. I wrote it down. When was this? 2 weeks ago, Miriam said. Board meeting, went long. Who argued with her besides Vane? Gavin Holt backed Vane. Celia Marsh stayed quiet, like always. Dr. Roth asked questions but didn't take a side. Miriam's voice had a dry edge. Afterward, Holt told Eleanor she was making enemies she couldn't afford. Lisette swiveled toward me. He did. I heard it. She laughed at him. She said, then you'll have to buy me new ones, Gavin. I almost smiled. That sounded like a woman who had decided where her flaw was. Did she ever mention being frightened? I asked. Lisette looked down. Not frightened. Angry. She said someone was trying to force her hand. Someone inside Lumen? Maybe, Lisette whispered. Or someone above it. Miriam sniffed. No one's above a board charter. I've learned that Miriam Lot types believe in paper more than people. It's how they survive. I nodded. All right. Another question. Did Eleanor keep anything unusual here? Personal items at the office? Miriam frowned. Not really. Photos of scholarship kids, her appointment book, a locked file drawer. Locked how? With a key. She kept it on her person. Miriam's stare hardened. You won't get that drawer without a subpoena. It's her private work. I'm not after it today. I'm asking if anyone else might have wanted what she kept private. Lisette swallowed. She did keep one thing in there I know about. Miriam turned sharply. Lisette! Lisette flushed but held on. A photograph. Not of kids. Just an old photo of her and a man. She kept it in a manila folder, not on display. She said it was insurance. The air in the little office changed, like somebody had turned a dial down a notch. I said, insurance against what? Lisette shook her head. She never told me. She just said if anyone asked about it, I should say I'd never seen it. Then she smiled and said, You're terrible at lying, Lisette. So don't try. Miriam's lips were thin. I didn't know that. Lisette stared at her. You weren't meant to. I leaned back slowly, so the photograph wasn't only on her desk at home. There was at least one version, or maybe the same one moved back and forth, kept at Lumen as insurance. That meant whoever went looking for it Thursday night might have been looking in 2 places. Last thing, I said. Who has been in Eleanor's office since her death? Miriam's jaw set. The police, Harold, Gavin Holt, me, Lisette. That's it, we sealed it. Good. Don't unseal it unless the police tell you, and if anyone pressures you to, call me. She nodded, stiff. Lisette nodded too, eyes wide. Thanks, I said, standing. Next, I'd like to speak with Mr. Holt, if he's in. Miriam's gaze slid past me toward the hallway. He's in Harold's office. They've been in there since 9, door shut. That so? Lisette's voice went small. They said they were handling the transition. Uh-huh. I pocketed that with the button and the scuff mark. Let's go see if they're still transitioning. We started down the corridor, the glass partitions glittering with light. Halfway there, I saw something at the far end. Dr. Ansel Roth, tall and narrow as a lamppost, stepping out of Eleanor's office with a file folder pressed to his chest. He froze when he saw me, then put on a smile that took too long to arrive. Lisette stopped dead beside me. "Dr. Roth, what are you doing in there?" Roth cleared his throat. "I was retrieving outreach reports for a meeting. We can't let her work stall. Eleanor would have wanted—" Lisette's eyes narrowed. "You didn't ask me or Ms. Lott." "I didn't think it necessary." His smile got brittle. "We're all grieving. Let's not turn this into a contest of permissions." I stepped forward gently. "Dr. Roth, I'm Archie Goodwin, Nero Wolfe's office. Mind if I ask what's in that folder?" He clutched it closer. "Foundation materials." "Specific ones?" "Community partnership contracts." "Then you won't mind showing me the cover sheet." He hesitated a fraction too long. Then the door behind him opened and Harold Vane's voice came out like velvet on a blade. "Ansel, there you are. Bring that in." Roth shot me a tight look and slipped into Vane's office. Lisette whispered, "He had no right." "No right is a flexible concept on 9th Avenue, I muttered. "But it's a good reason to ask Wolfe for a new lock." Somewhere in there, in a folder hugged like a secret, was either routine foundation paper or the shadow of something Eleanor Keene had called insurance. Either way, the light in Lumen had started to flicker, and I had the feeling somebody was trying to find the switch. By Thursday evening, the brownstone had the kind of quiet that isn't peace, just a held breath. The orchids upstairs were probably doing better than any of us, since plants don't have to wonder who is lying to them. Fritz was moving around the kitchen with a patience that made me feel guilty for walking too loud. Wolfe sat in the office, planted in his chair like a monument to indolence with a mind that could slice glass. We had spent 3 days tightening screws, which is Wolfe's hobby. I had gone back to Lumen, asked to see Eleanor's office, been refused with varying degrees of zeal, and then watched. The refusals told me more than the yeses would have. Lisette Arnaud had paled, stammered, and said she needed Harold Vane's permission. Miriam Lott had turned into granite and said, "Not without counsel present." Gavin Holt had appeared like a conjurer and smiled the refusal before I finished asking. Dr. Roth had tried to sound offended and ended up sounding nervous. And Harold Vane, when he finally got to me, had said, "Mr. Goodwin, we grieve. We don't perform tours." Which was fine. Tours are for museums. We were doing surveillance. On Wednesday, Saul Panzer brought in a neat packet that smelled like trouble. Victor Hale wasn't advertising at all. He'd been a strategic communications consultant, which is New York for fixer with good suits. His clients ranged from a state senator to a real estate developer who kept getting his name into headlines that began with alleged. Hale had also, 9 years ago, been on the payroll of a political non-profit that was investigated for funneling funds through shell charities. "Shell charities," Wolfe had repeated, tasting the phrase. "Yes," Saul said, "and the old non-profit's board chair was Harold Vane." That clicked so loud in my head I swore my teeth rattled. Saul also had a nugget about Dr. Ansel Roth. 3 years earlier, Roth had chaired a city outreach consortium funded in part by Lumen. The consortium had collapsed under accusations of irregular accounting, no charges filed, no smoke without someone sweeping fast, which gave us a triangle, Vane at the top, Hale as fixer, Roth as civic sweetheart with soft hands in hard places, and Holt as the lawyer who keeps the paper clean while the money gets dirty. The photograph started to stop being a mystery and started being an address. Yesterday morning, I trailed Holt after another of my polite refusals. He left Lumen at 11, not in his own car, but in a cab, which already had my eyebrows up. We did the city waltz, east, south, west, then north again, until he got out on West 73rd. He went into Eleanor Keene's building through the front, talked to Rizzo in the lobby for a minute too long to be casual, and then took the elevator up. I didn't follow him into the building. I'd learned over time that following a guilty man too closely can make him brave enough to run. Instead, I waited across the street with a newspaper and a bad attitude. He came out 42 minutes later carrying nothing obvious. No folder, no package, no satisfyingly incriminating briefcase, but he looked different. Not guilty different. Determined different. Like a man who has just located the last card in a deck and wants to shuffle before anyone sees the trick. He went straight back into a cab. I followed him to a townhouse on East 61st that belonged, according to Saul, to Celia Marsh. That was the moment the case got a spine. I didn't go in. I went home and told Wolfe. Wolfe listened with his eyes half-lidded, then said, "Excellent, tonight we gather them." So at 7:30 this evening the brownstone was full. Harold Vane arrived first, with the kind of offended civility you get from men who are used to being summoned only by plaques. Celia Marsh came 10 minutes later in a fur collar and discretion, a narrow woman with elegant bones and a calmness that had learned to live with money. Dr. Roth came in looking surprised to be asked. He'd worn a tweed jacket that made him resemble a professor in a play about professors. Gavin Holt arrived last. Right on time, which I maintain is a bad sign in lawyers. Lisette Arnaud was with them because Wolfe had insisted, and Miriam Lott was there because when Wolfe insists, even granite moves. We gathered in the office, all of them arranged on the yellow chairs and the red leather couch like a jury that didn't know it was on trial. Wolfe sat behind his desk, vast and motionless. I took my usual perch on the side chair, notebook in hand, pretending to be furniture and failing. Wolfe looked at them for a long moment. Silence is his gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said at last, "thank you for complying. We are assembled to consider the death of Eleanor Keene, which has unsettled your foundation and, to my irritation, my home. I will be brief only insofar as the truth allows." Harold Vane opened with a smooth growl. "Mr. Wolfe, with respect, this is highly irregular. The police are investigating." "The police," Wolfe said mildly, "are investigating a burglary. I'm investigating a motive." He turned his eyes on Gavin Holt. "Mr. Holt, you visited Eleanor Keene's apartment yesterday." Holt's eyebrows rose. "I did. At Walter Keene's request. He called me. He wanted papers." Walter Keene hadn't called anyone except me and the undertaker, but Holt didn't know I knew that. Wolfe nodded slowly. "And after that visit you went to Mrs. Celia Marsh's house." Marsh's head lifted a fraction. Holt's gaze snapped sideways, quick, involuntary. "I had board business with Mrs. Marsh," Holt said. "So you say." Wolfe's voice stayed even. "Now, let us remove the decor. Miss Arnaud has told Mr. Goodwin that Eleanor kept a photograph in her office drawer and called it insurance. Mr. Keene told us the same photograph was kept on her desk at home and that a man attempted to purchase it on Monday. 3 nights later, Eleanor is dead and the framed photograph is missing. That is not burglary. That is retrieval." Dr. Roth shifted. "Mr. Wolfe, this is conjecture." "No." Wolfe leaned imperceptibly into the word. "It is sequence." He turned his gaze to Harold Vane. "Mr. Vane, Lumen's funds were being directed, at your urging, toward a downtown program 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Keene refused. She said the sponsor was dirty." Vane's mouth tightened. "We disagreed on a grant. That's not unusual." "Not unusual," Wolfe said, "except that Eleanor Keene anticipated her own death. She asked her brother if he trusted this board to honor her work if she died suddenly. She called the photograph insurance. She refused to bend for a donor she thought corrupt. Then she died. Celia Marsh spoke softly for the first time. Eleanor was under stress. She said dramatic things. Perhaps. Wolfe's eyes did not soften. But drama is not a suicide pact. Now I will state what I have inferred, and you may correct me if you wish. That's Wolfe's equivalent of lighting the match. 9 years ago, he began, you, Mr. Vane, chaired a political non-profit investigated for diverting charitable funds into private and political channels. That investigation ended without charges. Yet the diversion occurred. It was facilitated by a man named Victor Hale, whose occupation is not advertising but laundering reputations. The funds were routed through shell charities. One of those shells was Lumen's predecessor trust, your trust, before it became a public foundation. Vane went still. Roth looked at his hands. Holt's jaw set like steel. Celia Marsh blinked twice. Wolfe continued. Eleanor Keene, at that time a junior finance officer attached to your trust, discovered the scheme. She confronted you privately. You made an arrangement. She would remain silent, and you would ensure her career flourished within the new foundation. She accepted, partly from fear, partly from ambition, partly from naivete. But she retained proof. A photograph taken at a fundraising gala that showed you, Mr. Vane, and Mr. Hale together with her, holding a ledger and a set of signed transfer forms. The forms were the real evidence. The photograph was its mask. It would mean little to a stranger and everything to the guilty. I saw Holt stiffen. I saw Vane's face do the faintest thing a man's face does when he's been struck without being hit. Wolfe said, Recently, you sought to revive the old practice. The downtown program was another shell. Eleanor Keene refused to sign. She reminded you, perhaps obliquely, that she had insurance. On Monday, Mr. Hale went to her apartment to buy it. She refused. On Thursday night, you or your proxy attempted retrieval. Proxy, Roth repeated, a bit too high. Wolfe's eyes slid to him. Yes, Dr. Roth, you were the proxy. Roth's mouth opened, then shut. No sound came out for a second, then, That's absurd. Is it? Wolfe asked gently. You are the board member with a prior accounting blemish. You were the one seen leaving her office with confidential files. Yesterday you were elsewhere, I believe, so you had already concluded your search at Lumen. But on Thursday night you needed entry to her apartment. It was not forced. You obtained access through the spare keys downstairs, either by persuasion or collusion. You entered by the rear stair to avoid cameras. In the apartment, you searched her desk area, moved the lamp, and found the photograph. You confronted her. Perhaps she woke. Perhaps she was already alert. A struggle occurred. You lost a button from your coat. Wolfe lifted a hand. I stood and handed him the evidence envelope. He held it up. This button was found under her desk. Roth stared at it as if it were a snake. Wolfe finished quietly. In the struggle you struck her. The lamp was toppled afterward to simulate disorder. You took the photograph and left. Then you returned to Lumen to secure any duplicates. You did not find them because Eleanor was more careful than you were diligent. Lisette whispered, Dr. Roth, like she couldn't believe a man with tweed could kill. Roth surged up from his chair. You can't prove any of this. Wolfe didn't blink. Proof is for courtrooms. I provide comprehension, but there is more. He turned to Gavin Holt. You, Mr. Holt, went to her apartment yesterday because you finally learned there was a second version of the photograph, or a packet with it, hidden there. You did not find it. Therefore, you went to Celia Marsh. Holt's voice went ice-calm. You're inventing? No, I am observing. Mrs. Marsh, you have long funded Lumen, and you have long had affection for Mr. Vane's vision. When Eleanor refused the Shell grant, you supported Mr. Vane. You also had access to Eleanor's office through trust. She gave you a sealed envelope last month, did she not? Marsh inhaled slowly. She gave me an envelope to keep. She said it was a personal contingency. Indeed, it was the duplicate insurance, placed where she believed even a desperate board would hesitate to trespass. Wolfe looked at Holt again. Yesterday you went to Mrs. Marsh to obtain it. Marsh's gaze flicked to Holt. He asked if Eleanor had left anything with me. He said Walter wanted her private papers. And you gave him the envelope. Her lips flattened. Yes, I assumed. You assumed in favor of loyalty, Wolfe said, which is common and often fatal. Holt's face had drained to a good lawyer's grey. He rose halfway. This is lunacy. I did not kill anyone. I did not order anyone killed. No. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. You did not kill Eleanor Keene, but you have attempted to destroy the evidence of your board's corruption. That makes you accessory after the fact, and perhaps before, in spirit. Holt opened his mouth. Wolfe didn't let him in. Mr. Vane, Wolfe said, you are at the center, yet you did not go to the apartment because you are old and visible. You used Dr. Roth, who was flattered into obedience by promises of advancement and frightened by threats of exposure. He went to retrieve what you needed. He botched it into murder. Now the insurance is split. One photograph recovered by you through Holt and Marsh, and one still missing. Unless you tell me where it is, I will assume it is already in Inspector Kramer's safe deposit box by tomorrow morning. That was a bluff wrapped in silk. Wolfe hadn't told me about any safe deposit box, which meant there wasn't one. But I could see Vane believe it the way men believe what they fear. Vane's composure cracked like a fine plate. Ansel, he said, voice low and savage, you said you could handle it. You said you'd only get the photograph. Roth turned toward him, eyes wide now with something close to panic. Harold, I tried. She woke. She screamed. I didn't mean... There it was. Not a confession, but close enough you could smell it. I was already reaching for the phone. Holt's head snapped to Roth. You idiot. Marsh stood abruptly, her fur collar trembling. Harold, is this true? All these years? Vane roared. Sit down, Celia. She did not. I called Kramer. I said, Inspector, it's Archie. You might want to come to the brownstone. Tonight, we have your suspect. I gave him the essentials and hung up before he could argue. In the office, Wolfe sat like a judge carved from old wood. The others were not carved from anything steady. Roth had gone gray-green and was sinking back into his chair as if gravity had turned personal. Holt was staring at the floor, thinking legal thoughts like a man counting exits. Marsh was holding herself upright on indignation. Vane was breathing hard through his nose, fury and fear tangled up so tight you could hear them scrape. Wolfe spoke one last time before the law arrived. Eleanor Keene sought to redeem a compromise she made long ago. She believed a foundation devoted to light should not be fueled by darkness. For that, she was killed. His eyes shifted to Vane. You, sir, will lose lumen, if not in court, then in conscience, which is often worse. Vane said nothing. He couldn't. His empire was being kicked out from under him by a photograph no one would ever frame again. Kramer arrived with 2 detectives in a uniform in under 15 minutes. Roth tried to protest, and then tried to explain and ended up in handcuffs, doing neither. Holt started to speak, thought better of it, and went silent the way lawyers do when they want to live to bill another day. Vane was questioned on the spot, and his answers had the stiff, brittle air of a man stepping onto a trap door and pretending it's a stage. After they were gone, the house settled like a sigh. I stood at the window with a cigarette I didn't light. Wolfe sat behind me, watching the street lights come on as if they were orchids blooming late. Well, I said, the light that turned off forever didn't stay off. Wolfe grunted softly. Light is not a moral entity, Archie. It illuminates saints and scoundrels with equal indifference. Eleanor tried to make it moral. Yes. His voice was quieter now. She tried to eat from 2 plates at once. It is a common human failing. He paused. But she also tried to correct it. That is less common and worthy of respect. Fritz appeared, gentle as ever. Herr Wolfe, dinner is served. Wolfe rose in his chair toward the smell of it. Good. I am famished. Redemption is exhausting to contemplate. He moved out. I stayed a moment, looking at the wet gleam on the pavement outside and thinking about a woman who had kept a photograph like a candle against a long darkness. Then I flicked my cigarette into the tray, followed Wolfe toward the dining room, and told myself that in this house, the only thing that really stays turned off forever is a lie that thinks it can live in the light.